Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Lord Ashenwing and Lady Moonwhisper in sacred matrimony. If anyone here has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Imagine pretending to get married in a video game. Ha ha ha.
Please, we're conducting a private ceremony. Could you please leave?
No, you!
You're ruining people's event. We've been planning this for weeks.
That's the point, LMAO. It's hilarious watching you guys get mad about your little dress-up party.
This is ruined. We'll have to reschedule. I can't believe this.
I'm sorry. I don't know why they do this. Why do they hate us so much?
Welcome back to MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask. I'm Boss Mode, and today we're talking about one of the cruelest forms of griefing, targeting roleplay communities. This isn't just trolling for fun. This is deliberately seeking out people engaged in creative storytelling and destroying it because you'd think they're weird. Let's talk about why RP griefing is so common and why it's particularly harmful. Before we get into the stories, let's talk about why roleplay communities get targeted so much more than regular players and what makes them particularly vulnerable to griefing. First, let's define what we're talking about. Role-playing in MMO means playing your character as an actual character. You stay in character and chat. You develop backstories. You interact with other players as your character interacts with theirs. It's storytelling using the game as a medium. RP communities are visible and predictable. They hold public events, weddings, trials, festival, tavern nights. They do it all. These events are scheduled and often advertised. Griefers know exactly when and where to find concentrated groups of RPers. They're sitting ducks. RP requires cooperation from everyone present. If you're doing a wedding and someone runs in spamming memes, the immersion is broken. You can't RP around someone actively trying to disrupt. Unlike raiding, where you can kick disruptive people, public RP spaces are open to everyone. You can't kick someone from Stormwind. RPers are often perceived as weird or cringe by the broader gaming community. There's a stigma around RP. People think it's nerdy, pretentious, or sexually deviant. This stigma makes RPers socially acceptable targets. Griefers feel justified trolling them because they deserve it for being weird. RP communities can't fight back easily. Most RPers aren't in combat gear during events. They're in cosmetic outfits. They're not spec'd for PvP. They're focused on storytelling, not fighting. Griefers can harass them with minimal risk. The reaction is entertaining. When you grief a regular player, they might log off or ignore you. When you grief an RP event, you get immediate emotional responses. People are invested in their stories. Breaking that investment generates visible frustration that griefers find hilarious. There's also an element of anti-intellectualism and creative destruction. RP is a creative activity. It requires imagination, writing skills, cooperation, and emotional investment. Some griefers specifically target creative expression because they resent it or don't understand it. They see people creating something and want to destroy it. The anonymity and power dynamic make it easy. You can create a level 1 character, run into an RP area, spam for 5 minutes, and delete the character. zero consequences. You've destroyed hours of planning and dozens of people's experiences with minimal effort. And there's the mob mentality. Once one person starts griefing an RP event, others join in. It becomes a pile-on. 5 griefers become 10, become 20. The event is completely overwhelmed. What makes RP griefing particularly cruel is that it's targeting people's creative expression and social bonding. These events aren't just gameplay, they're community building, storytelling, and friendship. Destroying them isn't just griefing, it's attacking people's social spaces. All right, let's get into some infamous RP griefing stories. These are incidents that became notorious in their communities. World of Warcraft's Goldshire Inn on RP servers is infamous. It's supposed to be a casual RP hub where people gather for tavern RP. In practice, it's become known for, well, other types of RP that we won't get into right now. But in 2019, a raid group from a different server used cross-realm features to invade Moonguard's Goldshire. 20 max-level players in full raid gear descended on the inn during peak RP hours. They killed every single player in the area, repeatedly for hours. RPers would respawn, try to get back to the inn, and then get killed again. The griefers camped the graveyard. They camped the entrances. They made Goldshire completely unusable. But they also specifically targeted RP. They'd read people's TRP3 profiles, an RP add-on that displays character info, and mock them in chat. They'd quote people's character descriptions back at them while killing them. They were targeting the RP specifically, not just doing random PvP. The Moonguard community organized counterattack. They brought their own raid groups, but the griefers had better gear and coordination. The battle went on for 6 hours before the griefers finally got bored. Blizzard eventually intervened and temporarily banned some of the griefers, but the damage was done. Several RP guilds quit the game. Some RPers transferred to different servers. The community was totally traumatized. This incident became infamous because it showed how cross-realm features could be weaponized against RP servers. The griefers weren't even on Moonguard. They came from PvE servers specifically to harass RPers. Final Fantasy XIV RP community runs player-made nightclubs, social places where people hang out in character, dance, chat, sometimes perform music. These venues use housing system features and often have staff, DJs, and regular events. One popular venue on Crystal Data Center was hosting a grand opening. Hundreds of people were attending. They advertised it on social media, built hype, put weeks into preparation. A group of about 50 non-RPers organized a raid on the event. They all showed up at once and filled the venue past capacity so legitimate attendees couldn't enter. Then started spamming emotes, using obnoxious animation, and disrupting the event. The venue owners couldn't kick them because Final Fantasy housing doesn't give you that control in public spaces. The raiders knew this, and they stayed for hours, making the event impossible to run. But they also doxed the venue's organizers. They found their social media, posted about the raid there, mocked them publicly. They turned it into harassment beyond just the game. The Final Fantasy community rallied. Other RP venues offered to host the event instead. Players reported the griefers en masse. Square Enix eventually suspended several accounts for harassment. But the venue organizers were so shaken that they shut down their venue permanently. Years of work building a community space destroyed in one night. This one's particularly cruel. A Guild Wars 2 RP community was holding an in-character funeral for a character who had died in their ongoing story. They built up this character for months. Their death was emotionally significant, and the funeral was the conclusion to a major storyline. They held it in a public zone because that's where the story took place. They announced it in advance so their community could attend. A group of about 15 players showed up specifically to disrupt it. They used loud skills, jumped around on the corpse, made jokes in map chat, and generally made the funeral impossible to conduct seriously. The RP community asked them to stop. They explained this was important to them, tried to appeal to their basic decency. The griefers laughed and did it even harder. What made it worse was some of the people in the RP community were actually mourning real losses. RP funerals sometimes overlap with real grief. A player's character dies around the same time they're dealing with real-world loss. The griefers didn't know or care. The community had to abandon the event and reschedule it in a private instance, but the emotional impact was lasting. Several community members quit RP entirely, saying they couldn't handle the vulnerability of investing in stories that could be destroyed by random trolls. This one's from WoW. An RP server had well-known RP characters with established names and reputations. Some of these characters had been around for years. When Blizzard allowed server transfer and name changes, a group of griefers intentionally transferred to the RP server and claimed names that were similar to the famous RP characters. They'd add one letter or special character to make the names almost identical to established characters. Then they'd go to RP events and pretend to be those characters but act completely out of character. They'd say offensive things, break RP, and generally tarnish those characters' reputations. The real RPers would see these imposters and have to constantly clarify, "That's not me. That's a troll with a similar name." It destroyed years of character building and reputation. Blizzard eventually added more name protection, but many RPers had already quit or name changed their characters, erasing their history. This type of griefing is insidious because it's not just disrupting events, it's identity theft within the RP community. Back when Star Wars Galaxy was alive, the RP community held elaborate government RP with elected senators, political parties, and formal meetings. During one of the Senate sessions, a big event with dozens of RPers participating in political RP, a group of griefers coordinated an attack. They threw grenades into the meeting hall. This was back when friendly fire damage existed in certain areas. They'd killed everyone in the Senate. The entire government RP structure was disrupted. The meeting couldn't continue because everyone was dead and responding. But the griefers recorded it and posted it online with mocking commentary. They called it the Senate bombing and treated it like a terrorist attack on RP nerds. The video got thousands of views, which encouraged more griefing. This incident showed how griefers just don't want to disrupt RP. They want to humiliate RPers publicly and create content mocking them. This one's old school from an RP-focused MUD, which is a text-based MMO. A player spent months building a storyline about their character's political rise. They coordinated with dozens of other players, got DM approval, and planned a major event where their character would seize power. Another player found out about this storyline and deliberately sabotaged it. They created a counter character specifically to ruin the storyline, metagamed information they shouldn't have known, and used game mechanics to invalidate months of RP. When confronted, they admitted they did it because they thought the storyline was stupid and pretentious. They felt justified because they thought the RP was cringe. The community was small enough that this one person's sabotage destroyed trust in collaborative storytelling. Several players quit. The game's RP scene never fully recovered. This shows how even in RP-focused games, there are people who join specifically to destroy what others are building. So what drives people to specifically target RPers? Why not just grief random players? Let's get into the psychology. First, there's social othering. RP is seen as weird by mainstream gaming culture. RPers are an outgroup that it's socially acceptable to mock. Griefers who wouldn't harass other players feel justified harassing RPers because they're asking for it by being weird in public. Second, there's the cringe factor. Some people are deeply uncomfortable with sincere creative expression. When they see people genuinely invested in their characters and the stories, they feel secondhand harassment. Rather than examine why that makes them uncomfortable, they lash out. Third, there's the sexual assumption. A lot of people assume all RP is erotic RP. They think Goldshire and its reputation represents all of RP. This gives them an excuse to harass RPers under the guise of calling out sexual behavior even when the RP is completely non-sexual. Fourth, there's power and vulnerability. RPers are emotionally invested in their events and stories. Breaking that investment gives griefers a sense of power. They can see the impact of their actions immediately. It's satisfying to their need for control and attention. Fifth, there's the anti-intellectualism. RP requires creativity, writing ability, and imagination. Some people resent that. They see RPers as trying too hard or thinking they're better because they engage in creative expression. Destroying that creativity brings them down a peg. 6, there's the mob mentality and social bonding through cruelty. Groups of griefers bond by jointly mocking RPers. It becomes a shared experience. Remember when we crashed that wedding? It's social connection built on harming others. And 7th, there's the content creation incentive. Griefing RP makes for entertaining videos and streams. The reactions are dramatic. The scenarios are ridiculous to outsiders. Griefers can build audiences by mocking RP communities. What's particularly insidious is that many griefers don't see themselves as bullies. They think they're just joking around or having fun. They don't recognize that they're targeting a specific community for harassment. Or they rationalize it by saying, if you RP in public, you deserve to be mocked. But here's the thing. RPers are just playing the game differently. They're using MMOs for collaborative storytelling. That's a legitimate use of space. Targeting them for that is bullying, plain and simple. So how do game developers handle RP griefing? And why do they so often fail to protect RP communities? Let's start with the developers who try. Final Fantasy XIV has designated RP servers and takes harassment seriously. They've banned accounts for disrupting RP events. They give RPers tools like busy status to filter unwanted interactions. Square Enix recognizes RP as legitimate gameplay. Guild Wars 2's added RP as a reportable harassment category. They've actioned accounts for deliberately disrupting RP. They don't always catch everyone, but they acknowledge it's a problem. Star Wars: The Old Republic has RP servers with slightly different rules. They enforce naming policies to protect RP immersion. They've taken action against serial RP griefers. But many developers completely fail RP communities. Blizzard's response to RP griefing in WoW has been inconsistent at best. Sometimes they action griefers, often they don't. They've removed RP PvP servers, reducing options for RPers. They've added features that make griefing easier, like cross-realm zone, bringing non-RPers to RP servers. The fundamental problem is that most developers don't design with RP in mind. RP servers exist, but the tools and protection for RP don't. You can't kick someone from public spaces. You can't create truly private events in public zones. You can't prevent mount spam or toy spam during events. And critically, GMs often don't understand RP well enough to recognize harassment. They see someone using game mechanics, mounting, emoting, using toys, and don't recognize it as deliberate disruption. The griefer isn't breaking technical rules, so no action is taken. There's also the perception problem. Some developers and GMs see RP as not real gameplay. If you're not raiding, PvPing, or questing, you're not playing the game correctly. So, when RP gets disrupted, it seems as less important than disrupting real content. What RP communities need are actual tools for protection. Private instance options for events. Better reporting categories specifically for RP harassment. GMs who understand RP culture, ability to create invite-only spaces in public zones, but most games don't provide these tools because RP is a minority playstyle. Developers prioritize features for the majority. RP communities are left to fend for themselves. So how do RP communities protect themselves when developers won't? Let's talk about the tactics RPers use to defend their spaces. First, they go private. RP communities create Discord servers, private instances, password-protected housing. They move events out of public spaces where griefers can access them. This works, but it also makes RP less visible and accessible to new players. Second, they organize security. RP guilds recruit PvPers and high-level players specifically to protect events. They post guards, they patrol areas. When griefers show up, the security team deals with them while RPers continue the event. Third, they mass report. When griefing happens, everyone reports the griefer simultaneously. Mass reports trigger automated systems that flag accounts for review. It doesn't always work, but it's more effective than individual reports. Fourth, they create blacklists. RP communities maintain lists of known griefers. They share these lists across guilds and servers. If a known troll shows up, everyone knows immediately and they're shut out of the events. Fifth, they adapt storytelling. Some RP communities build resilience by incorporating disruptions into their stories. If a griefer shows up, that's a demon attack. React in character. It's not ideal, but it maintains some immersion. 6, they coordinate with sympathetic players. Not all non-RPers hate RP. Some regular players sympathize with RP communities and help to protect them. RP communities cultivate these allies. And 7th, they use social media and documentation. They record griefing, post it publicly, name and shame. They create pressure through public awareness. Sometimes this gets developer attention. But here's what's sad. RP communities shouldn't have to do any of this. They shouldn't need security teams to hold a wedding. They shouldn't need to hide in private spaces. They shouldn't have to spend their gaming time defending against harassment instead of creating stories. The fact that they have to fight for their right to RP and peace shows how poorly MMO gaming culture treats creative expression. Trolling RP communities is easy. It requires minimal effort and generates maximum disruption. But easy doesn't make it right. If you're someone who griefs RP events, ask yourself why. What are you getting out of it? Is making people feel bad about their creative hobbies actually funny? Are you proud of disrupting something people spent weeks planning? RPers aren't hurting anyone. They're using the game to tell stories and build community. That's valid. You don't have to understand it or participate, but you should respect it. And if you're not an RPer, but you see RP griefing happening, consider helping. Report the griefers. Stand up for the community. Don't participate in the mockery. RP communities are part of what makes MMOs rich and diverse. MMOs should be spaces where different playstyles coexist. Raiders raid, PvPers PvP, and RPers RP. None of these is more valid than the others. When we protect only certain playstyles and allow others to be harassed, we make our games poorer. Next week on MMO Madness Behind the Troll Mask, we're diving into auction house manipulation, the silent trolls. We're talking about the players who crashed markets, cornered commodities, and turned economies into their personal playgrounds. You definitely don't want to miss it. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and support the podcast. Tell your guildmates. Share it on your Discord and leave us a review. And if you've got an RP griefing story as a victim, a defender, or witness, email us at podcast@mmomadness.com. Until then, respect other players' playstyles, protect creative communities, and remember, different doesn't mean wrong. I'm Boss Mode, and thanks for listening.